I didn't plan to find the ledger. It slid out of the metal drawer in Dad's shop when I tugged too hard, clipped my knee, and slapped the concrete like it had something to say. We were closing early because the rain over the Columbia hit sideways, the kind of rain that makes fishermen swear and tourists turn around in the Safeway parking lot. I picked the book up and felt the weight. Thick cover, oil-stained corners, the old kind you don't buy unless you plan to keep records forever. My dad, Michael Carter, believes in paper. He just doesn't believe in explaining it to me. I'm Lauren, 28. I teach tech at the high school where the heaters groan and the vending machine eats quarters. In this town, people know your last name before they know your first. Carter means boats, repairs, and the funny way our family pretends every Christmas that money isn't a conversation. If you ask, you're ungrateful. If you don't, you're responsible. It's a neat trick, how both can be true and you're still wrong either way. Dad was in the office arguing with Hank, my half-brother who calls himself a financial guy because he opened a spreadsheet once. Their voices carried low and tight, the way ropes creak before a knot gives. I flipped the ledger open. Same entry, month after month, circled in blue ink. The 15th. Emergency service, subcontractor. No name, just a P.O. box. The numbers weren't tiny. You don't pay emergency like that unless your boat is on fire or you're hiding something you don't intend to explain at dinner. Hank popped his head out. Lauren, we're talking business. Maybe let us finish? He said it with that smile the town knows. Nice enough for church, sharp enough to slice fruit. I closed the ledger and put it on the desk. Sure. Just making sure the emergency that keeps happening on the 15th is okay. He blinked, then laughed like I'd told a joke and I wasn't invited to the punchline. Dad didn't look at me. That stung more than it should have. Astoria looks pretty in the postcards. The bridge, the hillside houses, the fog that makes even the Walmart sign look cinematic. But pretty fog doesn't mean people don't talk. At church potlucks and Friday night games, you hear the same stories about who's strong and who's soft, who built something with their hands and who settled for teaching. Teaching isn't settling, but I stopped explaining that last year after Teresa, my stepmother, said I should be grateful. Dad gave me a job at the shop if the school ever cuts back. She said it in front of the Christmas ham. You learn to laugh silently. That night, we ate in the little office because the shop floor smelled like rain and diesel. Teresa brought us plates and told me I should smile more. I asked Dad about the P.O. box. He cut his meat like the answer was in there somewhere. Vendors, he said. Hank nodded as if the conversation had ended. I guess it had, for them. For me, it had just started. Later, when they left and the wind made the roll-up door breathe like the building was alive, I copied the entry dates into my phone. 15th, 15th, 15th. Money doesn't lie. People do. I didn't explode. That's not my thing. I write notes in the margins and I wait. The next morning at school, while my students were soldering wires crooked and trying not to burn themselves, I checked the credit union app for Dad's business account. He'd given me view-only access 2 years ago when he said he wanted me to learn. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he believed I wouldn't look. I looked. Transfers out on the 14th. Deposits in from odd-named service tickets on the 17th. And in between, that P.O. box again. Like a heartbeat the bank didn't care to question. At lunch, Miss Yee Matthews, the principal we all call Diane, asked if I'd coach robotics again. I said yes because I needed something to feel clean. On my way back, Mrs. Nolan from the corner store texted me a photo of a health insurance EOB with Dad's name in the emergency contact line. It wasn't my number underneath. It wasn't Teresa's either. It came in with the freight invoices, she wrote, probably filed wrong. It happens. It doesn't just happen. Paper wanders when it wants to be seen. Ms. Matthews had once audited the district's books. She knew policy and the numbers behind it. I drove to the USPS and rented a P.O. box, not because I needed one, but because people tell you things when you're a paying customer with a polite voice. The clerk with the world's best eyelashes told me Box 972 belonged to a business account with mail forwarding every third Tuesday. She didn't tell me more. She didn't have to. It was enough to picture someone lifting letters into a canvas bag and walking away before anyone could ask a second question. On my way out, a summer photo was pinned on the community board. Father, mother, teenager in a graduation cap. Faces I didn't know. The caption said, "We did it." That shouldn't have made my stomach drop. It did. I called Elliot. We were lab partners once, back when my hair was bad and his confidence was worse. He became a lawyer who reads contracts like they insulted him first. "If you're asking whether you're crazy," he said, "you're not. If you're asking whether you should confront them, not yet. Start with the boring stuff. Dates, amounts, who touches what. Boredom wins." I laughed because he was right and because I wanted to cry. He told me which records were mine to view and which weren't, what a notice of intent looks like, how to request vendor lists without sounding like you're accusing your own family of theft. "You're not accusing," he said. "You're verifying." At dinner, Teresa talked about her church committee and how the new treasurer doesn't understand accountability. I almost choked. Hank started a story about a customer who tried to haggle like this is Craigslist. Dad asked me about school, if kids still cared about math. I told him one of them designed a better brace for a broken oar lock and sold 3 to charter guides. Dad smiled like old times. "Smart kid," he said. I wondered if he'd ever say that about me without adding a condition in his head. When they left, I cleaned the shop because moving makes thinking easier. Somewhere between the sweeping and the part where you pretend the stains are just character, I found a stamped file under a coil of rope. A vendor agreement with a name that didn't match any local outfit. The font was too pretty for real work. The signature at the bottom looked like Hank had practiced it in the mirror. There was a line about emergency subcontracting services. And there it was again, the 15th. I took a photo of every page. If you feel guilty photographing your family's paperwork, you're not wrong. But there's a difference between betrayal and proof. I didn't sleep. The wind threw pebbles at my window. Or maybe that was just my head replaying Teresa's "Smile More" on a loop. In the morning, I made coffee too strong and walked to school in a mist that soaked my hairline. In the first period, a kid named Jay asked me if adults always know what they're doing. I told him the truth. Most of us are improvising. He said he thought grown-ups had flowcharts. I almost laughed. "Some of us do," I said. "We just draw them in pencil." By Friday, the ledger's dates lined up with the bank transmissions, and the bank transmissions lined up with a storage unit invoice that Hank had paid in cash. Storage units are where secrets go to nap. I parked outside and wondered if I wanted to open the door. Want is a funny word. I wanted Dad to be a man whose answers made me proud. I wanted Hank to be the kind of brother who didn't smile that way when the waitress called me sweetheart. I wanted Teresa to love something about me she couldn't turn into a warning. Mostly, I wanted the feeling you get when a math problem clicks and the numbers finally stop arguing. The clerk couldn't tell me anything. Privacy, rules, you know how it goes. He did say the renter had come by every 15th, like a religion. He didn't say the name. He didn't have to. Religions keep calendars. So do people who juggle 2 lives. That evening at the shop, Dad, Hank, and Teresa were waiting at the steel table like a panel. Teresa had put out paper plates and called that hospitality. "Lauren," Dad began, "you've been curious." Hank leaned back, smug as a cat who thinks the can opener's his idea. "You're not part of operations," he said. "It complicates things when you meddle." Teresa folded her hands like prayer. "Your father has a lot on his shoulders." I could have argued. I could have cried. Instead, I slid the photos across. Ledger entries, bank dates, the vendor agreement that tried too hard, a grainy shot of the storage invoice with cash circled in red. "I'm not meddling," I said. "I'm labeling. And I'm done being the soft one because you decided that's convenient." Dad stared at the papers as if they were written in a language he used to speak. He wasn't angry. He was tired. Tired and cornered by something he should have killed years ago. Maybe pride, maybe fear. Maybe both wearing each other's coats. Hank laughed first. "You think you found something? This is grown-up business, Lauren." He flicked one photo back to me with a finger. The gesture said more than his words. "Sit down. Stay small. Let men handle the part where money moves." I picked up the photo and flattened its edge. "Money moves," I said, "and it leaves footprints." I wasn't the only one in that room who heard the softness drop out of my voice. No one confessed. No one flipped a table. That's not real life. Real life is the part where your father says he'll look into it. Your stepmother says, "We can talk Sunday after church." And your brother smirks like gravity is on his side. I walked out into rain that had lost patience. In the car, I let my forehead rest against the steering wheel and I thought about Jay's joke. Maybe some of us do have flowcharts. Mine started to write itself. Observe, verify, map the money. There was a fourth box that didn't have a verb yet. Later, I'd label it consequences. Back at my apartment, I pulled a plastic tub from the closet and started an archive. Invoices, screenshots, dates, a list of names. Vendors, drivers, the PO clerk's first name and the time she said third Tuesday. I wasn't hunting blood. I was building a story the numbers couldn't refuse. A paper trail doesn't shout. It gathers. It waits. And then, when the room is finally quiet, it speaks. I texted Elliot. "If I asked for a town hall, would you come?" He answered before the three dots could finish their dance. "Yes. Bring the boring stuff. Boring wins." I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this town, someone kept an extra set of keys and an extra calendar. Somewhere, on the 15th, a door opened and closed and nobody asked why. I wasn't going to knock. I was going to hold up the ledger and let the door answer itself. And because life can't resist timing, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a voicemail that started with a cough. A woman's voice, careful, like stepping across a creek on stones. "Lauren, if you're... I shouldn't be calling, but you need to know he..." Static. Then the line died. I replayed it. The timestamp read 5:15 p.m. The 15th wasn't until next week. My heart did the math anyway. I didn't explode. I set an alarm for 6:00 a.m., printed what I had, and packed it in a manila folder like it was just another lesson plan. Tomorrow, I'd teach my kids that circuits don't care about your feelings. They care about connections. The town would learn the same thing soon enough. Connections, dates, signatures, boxes you rent when you're afraid to write your real address. People talk, paper remembers, and I was done being quiet in the way that helps the wrong story win.
"Long enough, but I can't show you without, you know." He gestured toward the world of forms and approvals. I didn't press. People help when you don't make them break rules for you. I thanked him and bought a lock I didn't need. On the way out, I checked my voicemail. There was a new message from the same unfamiliar number as before, longer this time. "Lauren, I shouldn't..." He promised. He said it would just be until the kid's graduation. I told him this isn't how you keep a secret. I told him it grows teeth. A breath. I'm sorry if I'm part of your pain. I didn't know you back then. I do now. The line clicked off. I forwarded it to Elliot. He typed back, "We don't call, we let them come. Meanwhile, we verify." The verification came in mundane packets. Mileage logs that didn't match invoices, a contract template with metadata showing Hank as the last editor, a vendor insurance certificate where the policy number matched a plan Mrs. Nolan had once filed under Teresa's name. Dots, dots, dots. People think they hide. What they do is leave breadcrumbs and trust boredom to bury them. On Wednesday, Ms. Matthews asked if we could host a financial literacy night community, Fry 19 Riskars, for seniors and their families, scholarships, apprenticeships, real-world budgeting. People need a win, she said. Our town could use a nice night. Could we add a section on reading contracts? I asked. Her eyes lit. Please, half the parents sign phone plans they don't understand. I took a breath that wasn't entirely about phone plans. Would it be okay if, hypothetically, we demonstrated how to track money moving through a small business? Anonymized, of course. She studied me for a beat that lasted a century. As long as you keep it educational, she said, and civil. Civil is a promise you make to the part of yourself that wants to break glass. I spent the lunch building a 5-slide deck. How invoices should look, how they sometimes look, what emergency means. When it's real, how to read a forwarding receipt, why a P.O. box is not evil but can be. Boring, clear, kind. I embedded redacted screenshots and flowchart arrows and thick lines my students could see from the back row. It wasn't a courtroom, it was a classroom. That was the point. At home, I taped a new box to my wall map. Friday, 2:30, Fry 14:30 p.m. Elliot had turned up something I hadn't expected. A calendar hold sent from Hank's email to a local competitor titled Option Review, Asset Purchase. It wasn't a signed deal. It was a meeting, but meetings are how silent promises shake hands. Town Hall Friday? Elliot asked. Financial Literacy Night, Community. Fry 19 Ols, I corrected. We don't call it a town hall. We call it Financial Literacy and Real-World Readiness. Catchy. It will be if people leave, knowing what a memo line is for. He laughed. You're terrifying when you're practical. Thursday evening, Teresa knocked on my apartment door without texting first, her version of intimacy. She held out a Tupperware like a shield. Chicken, she said. I made too much. We stood in my doorway, two women who'd chosen different definitions of survival. She looked around my place like it might confess who I am, faster than I could. Her eyes paused on the wall with the boxes and arrows. She didn't step closer. She didn't have to. You think you're right, she said. It wasn't a question. I think the numbers are honest. And what will honesty solve? Everything that lies won't, I said, and I hated how rehearsed I sounded. She stared at me as if she could sand me down to her idea of nice with enough patience. Then she nodded once and left the chicken like a white flag with a lid. I ate it cold at midnight while rearranging slides. The deck didn't mention my family. It didn't need to. The pattern is the story. Names are just how people sell paperbacks. Friday morning smelled like wet cedar and new pencils. I wore the only blazer I own because sometimes costumes help. The auditorium filled with students, parents, union guys, and jackets that still had paint on them, a few small business owners, the bank rep who always brings pens. Dad came. Teresa sat beside him, her spine a yardstick. Hank didn't show, which told me everything I needed to know about his calendar at 2:30, Fry 14:30. Miss Matthews opened with a welcome that made people laugh in the places she meant to. Then she handed me the mic like it wasn't a torch. I clicked to slide one and saw my hands were steady. Good evening, I said. I teach tech. Tonight we're going to talk about a different kind of wiring. Money. Money is a circuit. It either flows the way it's built, or it arcs and burns things you love. A few heads tilted. Good. If they cared to tilt, they cared to listen. I walked them through memos and line items, through what an EOB is and why the words emergency contact carry weight. I explained P.O. boxes and forwarding schedules and why emergency vendors are supposed to leave footprints, not fog. Slide by slide, no accusations, just patterns. People took photos. People nodded. People whispered, boredom wins. Halfway through, I clicked to the flowchart. 3 bold nodes and an arrow. Money leaving on the 14th, landing where it shouldn't on the 15th, and resolving in cash at a storage unit. I didn't label names. I didn't need to. Someone in the 3rd row who works at the storage facility coughed in a way that sounded like recognition. I closed with a slide titled, "Questions We're Allowed to Ask," and read them like a liturgy. What is this for? Why on this date? Why this route? Who benefits? Then I thanked them for letting me teach something I wish I'd learned 10 years sooner. Applause rose like a thing with its own lungs. Ms. Matthews stepped up to talk scholarships. I stood aside and breathed for the first time all day. Dad found me backstage. He looked, for once, like a man walking without a story clutched in both hands. "You were good," he said. It sounded like English, the way it sounds in a dream when you don't know the grammar yet. Did you have to do it here?" "Yes," I said, "because there's no answer that makes someone who's hiding feel safe." "I did." He nodded once, as if we'd traded a knife and agreed to be careful. "Lauren," he said, "if I asked you to come by the shop at 6, would you?" I should have said no. I should have demanded names in a hallway lit by mercy. I said yes because loss makes you generous with time. At 6, the shop lights glowed like a ship at sea. Dad stood with his hands on the steel table, palms flat, as if the metal could teach him how to be steady. Teresa was there too, but Hank wasn't. Dad didn't wait for me to ask. "He's at a meeting," he said, "with men who will buy my life and hang it in a place that doesn't smell like the river." "Option review, asset purchase," I said, because I wanted to see what truth did to his face when it heard its own name. He closed his eyes the way people do when they're about to tell the truth and wish they didn't have to. I thought I could fix it without this. I thought if I let him move things for a while, I could get ahead. I kept thinking the 15th would stop needing me. "Emergency is a choice if you make it every month," I said softly. "What did you promise, Dad?" He looked at the ledger like it had raised him and was now disappointed. "Not to lose the shop," he said, not to admit I was already losing it. We stood there with the kind of silence that fixes nothing and still does more good than shouting. Then my phone buzzed. Elliot, 2:31 p.m. Competitor lobby. Hank just walked in. A second buzz, 2:46 p.m. Leaves with folder. Third, email hit my inbox from anonymous. Notice of intent to sell. Draft attached. The PDF icon glowed like the world's smallest meteor. Dad saw my expression and straightened like the rope finally tightened. "What is it?" "Evidence," I said. "The kind that brings a room to order." He swallowed. Teresa's eyes flicked between our faces like she tuned into a show and missed the pilot. "What happens now?" I looked at the map in my head. Observe, verify, map the money. That 4th box, empty all week, finally wrote itself. Convene. "Now," I said, "we invite the room." Teresa pauses at my wall. The flowchart is taped like a quiet mirror. Her eyes travel the sequence. Something loosens. She whispers almost to herself. Honesty solves what fog can't.
The column neither of us expected to make the big screens filled the wall. 4:15. Push to emergency. Dad won't ask questions. 6:15. Use PO. Avoid direct line. T will call again. 9:15. Move to box. Vendor wants cash at unit. I heard the room inhale like a single lung. Someone whispered, "Dad?" Soft. Not mine, not Teresa's. Hank's jaw did a tick like a skipped gear. He didn't look at me. He looked at the spreadsheet as if the notes might climb off and apologize for being themselves. "Last thing," I said. "Contracts speak when you pace yourself." I played a short audio clip, subtitled for people in the back, of a voice I had no right to know but recognized as someone who'd called my voicemail. "It grows teeth," the woman had said. On screen, the words grew a simple underline. I didn't annotate the rest. Ms. Matthews returned to the mic. 5-minute break, she said, then scholarships. It was a kindness and a fuse. People stood, clustered in little weather systems of talk. Elliot sidled over. "Steady," he said, Steady, I repeated, even though my ribs felt like a drumline. Hank reached us first, the jacket finally on his arm like he'd remembered the part where coats go with leaving. Cute, he said, low enough to pass for polite. Educational theater. You're welcome, I said. His eyes did the thing where they calculate the minimum apology that keeps the machine running. You didn't have to make it public? I didn't make it anything, I said. Paper did. He cut a glance at Elliot. Lawyering this with a high school stage. Classy. I'm not her lawyer, Elliot said. I'm a citizen who likes receipts. Dad appeared before the sentence could turn. He didn't face me. He faced Hank. Is it true? Define it, Hank said. The 15th, Dad said. Define that. Hank laughed his fruit-cutting laugh. You always needed me to fix the mess the shop makes. And I fixed it. With cash at a storage unit, I said. He turned. Do you know what payroll feels like when 3 jobs slip a week and the barge company sits on a check? Do you know what suppliers do when Michael Carter is 2 days late? You move money, I said. You don't move truth. He tilted his head. Truth is what allows the lights to stay on. Lights aren't a value, Elliot said. They're a bill. Hank stepped closer. You think you're clean because you teach kids to solder? You've never had to sit with a vendor who tells you what happens if your family's name stops meaning paid on delivery. Dad's voice wavered. Henry. Hank flinched at the full name, then recovered. You gave me this. He jabbed a finger at Dad's chest. You taught me the 15th. Teresa arrived with the look of a woman trying to hold a dinner plate under a waterfall. Enough, she said. Not to me, to him. It surprised everyone, including her. You signed a draft, I said. I didn't raise my voice. The decibel level was crowd enough. Option review, asset purchase. Friday at 2:30 p.m. I have the calendar hold, I have the draft. For a second, he didn't understand the sentence had an ending. Then he did. Anonymous tips, he said dryly. Courage in the shadows. Sometimes courage starts there, Elliot said. Sometimes it decides to step into a gym with fluorescent lights and a microphone that makes everyone sound worse. Hank looked over my shoulder at the tables where Ms. Matthews had laid out scholarship pamphlets like a polite future. He calculated again. Then he chose the wrong number. You want a show? He said loudly enough for the rows behind Dad to pretend they weren't listening. Fine, here's your show. Your teacher daughter doesn't know what solvency looks like. She thinks a P.O. box is a conspiracy because her feelings got hurt at Christmas. That sentence landed in the exact place in the room where the union guys stopped yawning. One of them, blue jacket, paint on cuff, said, Not to anyone. My kid's in her class. It wasn't a rebuttal. It was a fact. It made better weather. Ms. Matthews reappeared at the edge of the cluster, the way principals do when cafeteria trays start to tilt. We can take this to the office, she said. We can take it to the office, I agreed, or we can take it to the place that matters. I turned, not to a stage, but to the projector. On the screen, the Secretary of State filing waited, the one with manager, Henry Carter. I lifted the mic because whispers need spine. We're not here to humiliate. We're here to name things accurately. This filing names a shell. These memos name intent. The draft names a sale. You can argue about interpretation. You can't argue about dates. Hank's mouth did that small fish opening that thinks it's a shark. Dad sat down like a man who'd learned that steel tables don't share their steadiness. Teresa moved her hand toward his shoulder and left it hovering in the air like mercy with stage fright. Scholarships in 2 minutes, Ms. Matthews said without moving her lips, a ventriloquist for order. I made a choice that would change the rest of the week. One proposal, I said. Simple, transparent, not revenge, a sequence. The union guys looked up. People like proposals. They're nouns with legs. First, I said, an independent audit, separate accounts, monthly reports posted where employees can read them, no more 15ths we can't explain. Second, a remedy plan. Where cash moved off book, it comes back on. If it takes time, fine, but it moves in daylight. Third, a pause on any asset sale until the audit finishes and employees weigh in. I could feel Elliot thinking, that's the spit-polished public version. He wasn't wrong, but rooms need handholds. Hank recovered enough to sneer. And who made you foreman? Nobody, I said. Numbers did. A voice from the aisle. She's right. It was the storage clerk. He had come in late and chosen anonymity and was now done with it. He came every 15th at 5. We keep footage. He stopped like his own mouth had surprised him. Just saying. Another voice, Mrs. Nolan's. And mail forwarding the third Tuesday. That's not a crime, but it's a pattern. People didn't clap. They did the more dangerous thing. They nodded to themselves. Consensus is a soft animal that eats harder ones. Hank took a step back, the jacket slipping, the fruit smile failing. This is a witch hunt, he said. No, Ms. Matthews said. This is a financial literacy night. Community, 7:00 p.m. You're welcome to stay and learn how a scholarship works. Beat. Then laughter, the kind that unfreezes a room. We wrapped the educational portion. I answered questions about memo lines and why you should photograph a contract before you sign it. The bank rep demonstrated how to set alerts for transfers, then handed me a pen I didn't need like we'd completed a diplomatic mission. After, Dad asked to meet at the shop. No Teresa, no audience. Just us and the ledger that had raised him. He started before the door finished shutting. I was proud, he said, the admission sounding like a foreign sentence he'd practiced in the car. And afraid. I kept thinking if we just got through the next month, the 15th would stop needing me. Hank said he could smooth it. I wanted to believe him. Wanting is a kind of math, I said. It rounds. He swallowed. I did not know about the storage cache. You didn't ask. He nodded, a slow mercy handing itself out. I didn't ask. He put both hands on the ledger again like he was swearing an oath to a heavy god. I'll do the audit, he said. I'll post it. I'll ask. Good, I said. There's one more thing. He looked up, eyes older than the shop. We convene, I said. Union reps, vendors, Ms. Matthews if she'll come. The storage guy, Mrs. Nolan, Elliot, you, me, Teresa if she chooses, Hank if he wants to face his work with a spine. We set terms. What terms? The kind that turn off emergency, I said. For good. He nodded again, smaller but real. Okay. Saturday morning smelled like wet rope and honesty. We set folding chairs in a half circle on the shop floor because circles make better weather than rectangles. The union rep brought coffee strong enough to fix a marriage. Mrs. Nolan brought cookies that ended 3 arguments before they started. The storage clerk wore a nicer shirt than yesterday, and a face that said this was the bravest thing he'd done this year.
Hank came last. He didn't sit. He stood with the posture of a man negotiating against oxygen. I kept it boring. Housekeeping, I said. Ground rules, no yelling, no name calling. We stick to paper and decisions. We end with a written plan and signatures. Nobody leaves with mystery. I laid out the draft. Elliot walked the room through what an audit does and what a remedy plan looks like. The union rep asked for ESOP consideration. Teresa, to her credit, surprised all of us. If we're doing this, she said, voice low but steady, we're doing it all the way. Separate accounts, outside bookkeeper, and Michael. You don't make any more promises you can't keep because you're trying to keep people from worrying. Dad blinked, and in that blink, I saw the man who had built things with his hands and then forgot that asking for help is also a kind of building. Hank tried one last angle. "You're going to ruin us," he said. "No," I said. "You're going to help us not lie." I slid a pen across the table. "Or you're going to step aside. That's not revenge, that's consequence." Silence. The kind that either explodes or changes shape. Hank's fingers flexed like he'd rather break the pen than pick it up. Then he did the thing cowards and sons sometimes do when a room refuses to carry them. He signed, eyes on the page, mouth a hard line that had run out of curves. We got the rest. Audit scheduled, accounts separated, vendor list released. Copy of the storage unit ledger requested by counsel with a polite letter that was, in its way, a velvet hammer. A pause on any sale until the audit finished and 3 pay periods passed without an emergency. It wasn't glorious, it was administrative, which is another word for salvation when the problem is patterns. After, people lingered the way they do when they've watched something tilt toward right. The storage clerk shook my hand. The union rep smacked Elliot's back like a blessing with fingerprints. "Mrs. Nolan pressed extra cookies on Dad, the way only saints and small business owners can. When the shop emptied, Dad and I stood in the doorway and watched a sliver of sun find the river. He didn't say sorry, he said something harder. "I should have asked you sooner," he said. I looked at the ledger. "You're asking now." He nodded. "What's the next box on your flowchart?" I had written it on my wall in pencil last night and gone to sleep for the first time in a week. Observe, verify, map the money, convene. I added the 5th word with my mouth before the pencil. Repair. "Now," I said, "we fix." Behind us, the steel table held the signatures. In front of us, the river kept moving exactly the way it always had. That was the point. We weren't asking the water to change. We were changing the way we built our boats. The audit team arrived on a Tuesday with quiet shoes and clipboards that didn't apologize for being thorough. 2 women, 1 man, people who smelled like spreadsheets and good coffee. They set up at the steel table as if it had always been an audit desk, not the altar where my family learned to pray to the 15th. I didn't hover. I watched patterns land. The lead auditor, Ms. Patel, asked for read-only access, vendor rosters, work orders, storage invoices, and anything bearing the words expedite or emergency. She smiled at me like she understood what it costs to be right in a room that preferred fog. "We'll call out controls, not just culprits," she said. It sounded like mercy with math. By noon they had their first list. 10 duplicate vendors, same owner, new names, 3 storage cash drops that matched off-book payouts, and a recurring reclass on the 14th that turned overhead into emergency services. On paper, the shop had survived a disaster every month for a year. In life, it had survived pride. Dad signed the consent letters. Teresa watched him with that yardstick spine, but softer now, like she'd traded the wood for cloth. Hank paced outside, then inside, then pretended he needed to check the torch valves until Ms. Patel asked him if he'd prefer to sit or keep pretending to be a wind chime. He sat. The audit didn't make speeches. It made columns, source, amount, route, control failure, remediation, owner, deadline. Every time a number looked at us, we looked back. The room changed shape around the most boring words in English. "Will document." By dusk, the draft remedial action plan sat on the table beside a box of donuts whose glaze had stiffened into honesty. It had 19 bullets and the quiet authority of a to-do list that intends to become law. Headlines, separate accounts, no commingling, 2 signature releases for anything over $1,000, independent bookkeeper, monthly close, variance report shared in the lunchroom, emergency definition locked to a page, what counts, who certifies, how long it lasts, vendor consolidation, kill duplicates, publish the approved list, ESOP pilot at 10%, vesting after 12 months for skilled crew, worker seat at the quarterly review, remedy plan for off-book cash, repayment schedule signed by Hank. If late, triggers a convert to equity clause none of us had words for until Elliot wrote them. Storage unit access limited, logs, camera pools preserved, cash prohibited. We reconvened the circle. Union reps returned, nodded at the bullets like men who'd seen worse lists fail and wanted to believe this one would learn to stand. Ms. Patel read the plan aloud without drama. "It is not punishment," she said. "It's plumbing. If you do this, water flows where it should." Hank stared at bullet 6 like it had insulted his lineage. "If I sign this, you're making me poor." Elliot didn't blink. "No, it makes the company solvent and you accountable. Those aren't synonyms." Hank's mouth tensed. "It's humiliating." "Humiliation is public," I said. "This is private and written. Pick the mercy you prefer." Dad lifted the pen and surprised us all. "I'll sign first," he said, "because I made a religion of the 15th. He signed with a hand that shook once and then found its line. Teresa signed next. "Separate accounts," she said, looking at Dad, "means you stop promising from your mouth what your hands can't deliver." It should have sounded like scolding. It sounded like love that refuses to go feral. Hank didn't move. The union rep cleared his throat in a voice built from Winters. "You keep saying humiliation like it's the worst thing that can happen," he said. "It ain't. The worst thing is men not bringing checks home because someone thought secrecy was more dignified than math. Silence did the math none of us wanted. Hank signed. We added signatures from 2 foremen and Ms. Matthews as a community witness, her idea, classier than mine. "When paper forgets its manners," she said, "it helps to remember the room it lives in." The next scene was a choice. We could have posted the plan on a corkboard and called it culture. I asked for something older and truer, a public acknowledgement. Not on a stage, but on the shop floor with coffee and ugly fluorescent light, the kind that shows faces as they are. Dad stood with the microphone we use at safety briefings and held the plan like a contract with the town. "We lost our way," he said, voice steady as beams. "Emergency became a habit. My pride became a plan. Henry moved money wrong. I let him. We chose fog over questions. We're choosing questions now." He didn't gesture toward me. He didn't need to. "Lauren made us read paper," he said. "We'll keep reading." Teresa took the mic and did the harder job. "I said things that made small a woman who wasn't small," she said. "In trying to be strong, I mistook quiet for lesser. I'm sorry." She put the mic down like you put down a blade you've learned isn't a spoon. Applause isn't forgiveness, but it's the weather forgiveness likes to grow in. The union guys didn't clap long. They clapped true. Mrs. Nolan cried because sainthood costs water. After, we posted the plan where the lunchroom corkboard could see it. The foreman took a photo and sent it to 5 people before he finished his sandwich. The bank rep set up transfer alerts on Dad's phone, and a second phone that would live in a lockbox for redundancy. Boring one again. The first month under the plan felt like learning to walk after you've used a car wrong for a year. Invoices waited. People didn't. We told vendors the truth. Terms would change. Payments would meet the terms. No more miracles on the 14th after midnight. A few balked, most relaxed, relieved to prefer rules to begging. Hank started community service on Saturdays at the public works yard, painting over the same graffiti he'd driven past for years. He didn't Instagram it, the clause for bad performance. "Accountability is not content," Elliot had written, and I loved him a little for the sentence. He also enrolled in a basic finance course at the community college. The first night he texted me a photo of an amortization table, like a boy who wanted a grade. I sent back a thumbs up. It was the only emoji that didn't lie. At the shop, the ESOP pilot changed the air. Men who had once shrugged at audits started asking about vesting. A welder who never spoke in meetings asked whether near-miss reports could count toward the safety bonus we'd attached to the plan. When you stop letting emergencies eat the calendar, people start scheduling hope. We had one bad day. 2 invoices hit at once after a barge company delayed a check, and a forklift gave up its ghost on a Wednesday. I watched Dad's eyes pull toward the old religion. We stood at the steel table without donuts, and with the plan between us like a fence that loves you. "We can push the smaller job one day if the customer agrees," I said. "We can ask the parts supplier for split delivery. We can call the bank and show them this plan and ask for a 1-week bridge at the rate they promised the last time we did this wrong." Dad exhaled a sound that used to be a groan and now was just air leaving a room. "We'll call," he said. He called. The bank said yes because paper had learned to use its indoor voice. The apology we posted on the shop website was short and written in nouns. We misclassified expenses. We used cash off book. We corrected controls. We will publish variance reports monthly. We didn't name feelings. We named repairs. People stopped me at Safeway to say the thing men of a certain age say when they want to respect you without admitting you taught them. Good job. One woman in line squeezed my forearm and whispered, "You didn't scorch earth, you planted it." I nodded because saying thank you would have made me cry. We ran the first monthly meeting with the crew under fluorescent lights that refused to be flattering. I laid out the variance report. Ms. Patel joined by speakerphone, the corporate equivalent of a weather radio. The numbers were boring. The 15th had become a date on a calendar again, not a cliff. Hank presented a tiny slide deck on how not to use emergency like duct tape. He didn't joke. No one needed him to. After the meeting, Dad asked to speak in the yard. He looked at the river like it was a mentor who did not care to be flattered. "I don't know how to be new," he said without looking at me. "I know how to hold a wrench and how not to make men feel small. I don't know how to be the sort of man who asks his daughter to write policies." "You don't have to know," I said. "You have to do. Knowing will catch up." He nodded. "You think I should step back?" I didn't answer fast. Truth should never sprint past love. "Not forever," I said. "For a while. Let the plan be boss. Let the crew see it rule you."
He winced at the word rule and then relaxed, because names are stronger when they don't scare us. "Then the plan rules," he said. He said it like liturgy. We installed a transparent suggestion board in the lunchroom with rules. No snark, no anonymous bile, just better ways. The first card was from a kid who'd been silent for 6 months. "Color code vendor categories on work orders so we can see at a glance what's up." We did. The work orders stopped pretending they were novels and learned to be receipts. Teresa found me in the break room with 2 mugs and an awkwardness she didn't try to sand smooth. "I was wrong about you," she said, not like a confession, but like a report. "I thought I was protecting your father from shame. I was protecting him from the help he needed." I didn't tell her I'd wanted an apology since the Christmas ham. She had just given me one that paid interest. "I'm not here to win," I said. "I'm here to repair." "You did both," she said, and handed me the better mug. We kept our promise to the community. Every first Friday, we posted the variance report and the ESOP tally. We started a micro apprenticeship with my students. Half day a week on the yard, pay for real, credit for school. Jay 3D printed a queen chess crown and taped it above the flowchart in my classroom. He didn't explain. He didn't have to. 2 weeks into the new month, Ms. Patel sent the final audit letter. No forensic surprises, no jail. Just numbers that had learned their names and a plan that had learned its gait. The last line read, "Controls effective as designed. Maintain frequency." I read it twice because it sounded like a compliment you could build a life on. We held one last circle, smaller now, more like a family than a committee. Elliot brought pie because he is a mystic of timing. The storage clerk wore his nice shirt again. Mrs. Nolan cried again and told me crying was her ESOP. Hank didn't speak. He stacked chairs. It was the most eloquent thing he'd done in months. On my wall at home, I looked at the 5 boxes I'd drawn in pencil. Observe, verify, map the money, convene, repair. I traced them with my finger, like you trace a scar you've decided to keep. I didn't add revenge because it had never belonged there. Consequence did. Consequence is what happens when you make a map and then have the courage to follow it even when a river thinks you won't. Dad knocked once, then remembered and knocked twice more. A joke from when I was 8 and he thought the world could be held together with signals and snacks. He sat on my couch like a man testing furniture in a store he can now afford. "I'm proud," he said. The sentence didn't wobble. "Of the plan?" I asked, because humor is the only way I know to carry tenderness without dropping it. "Of the person who made it," he said. He looked past me at the wall. at the boxes that had named our month. "What's the last one?" "There isn't a last one," I said. "There's just the one we write every month." He nodded like he understood that permanence is maintenance dressed for work. "Then we'll keep writing." Outside, the river didn't care. It taught the same lesson it always teaches. Flow where you're built to go. Carve when you must. Carry what you can. Leave the rest speaking quietly in lines no one can argue with. I opened the window and let the air in. It smelled like metal and pine and paperwork done right. It smelled like a life you could stay. The spring assembly didn't promise catharsis. It promised folding chairs, a podium that squeaked, and the kind of fluorescent light that makes everyone look like they need a nap. I wore a navy dress with pockets because dignity needs somewhere to put her hands. Ms. Matthews introduced me as Ms. Carter, who teaches tech, and, when necessary, plumbing for money. The room laughed in the place she meant. I stepped up to the mic, and the auditorium exhaled into the sort of quiet that tells you people want the ending to be true. "Good morning," I said. "In my class, we solder circuits. They work when connections are honest. This town, our families, work the same way." I paused because endings deserve oxygen. This year, I learned that emergency can be a habit, that pride can dress like a plan, and that paper remembers even when people forget. I also learned that repair is a verb. I told them what I could without turning my life into a spectacle. How we separated accounts, how the shop posted variance reports, how the 15th turned back into a square on a calendar. I didn't say Hank's name. I did say Aesop, and a line of welders in the back thumped the floor twice. Union for amen. Then I said the hardest sentence. "I thought I wanted revenge," I said. And what I actually wanted was to live in a town where consequences were boring, not theatrical. Where we fix what we break, and we write it down. I looked at my students. You don't have to choose between being kind and being clear. You can be both. It just takes more paper. They clapped, because assemblies clap. But some faces held the private relief of people who have watched a house stop smoking and start being a house again. After, in the hallway that never stopped smelling like pencils and hope, a senior in a borrowed suit said, "My dad and I read your report." His voice shook. "We changed the way we do cash." It wasn't a confession. It was a weather report. I told him weather changes one pattern at a time. At the yard, the world carried on being particular. The audit closed out with a final letter that read like a hymn. Controls effective as designed. Maintain frequency. We framed it because some scriptures deserve frames. The suggestion board collected actual suggestions. The safety bonus paid out after a month with no near misses. Mechanics who had once shrugged at memos started arguing about fonts like they were picking out baby names. That's how you know a culture is healing. Men care which sans serif tells the truth. Hank completed his community service without photos. He turned in every repayment on time, and when he missed one by an hour, he texted the union rep before he texted me. The clause we'd written stood there like a polite bouncer and never had to raise its voice. On a Thursday that looked like any other Thursday, he came into the shop, stacked chairs without being asked, and left a single sticky note on the steel table. "Thank you for not finishing me off when you could." He didn't sign it. He didn't have to. Some handwriting learns humility faster than mouths do. Teresa brought cupcakes that were prettier than necessary and said, "To the room, not to me. We'll keep our accounts separate and our gratitude combined." Someone laughed, someone cried, and someone asked for the recipe. A communal sacrament. Dad met me by the roll-up door at dusk, hands in the pockets of a jacket he'd owned since before my students were born. The river did its river thing, indifferent and instructional. "I'm stepping back a notch," he said. "Not out. Back. Let the plan work without me standing on its throat. He tried to smile. It came out honest instead. You were right. I was loud on paper, I said. That's all. He took a breath you take when surgery is over and the nurse says you'll keep the limb. I am proud, he said. And this time he didn't look at the ground to find the word. He let it live in the air, where it belonged. I should have told you that when you were 8 and built a bridge out of popsicle sticks that didn't fall. It fell, I said. Not before it taught me something, he said. We stood there until the river went purple and trucks on the bridge turned their own lines of light into a moving prayer. Not the kind you say when you're begging, the kind you say when you're grateful and want to remember how. At home, I took down the flowchart on my wall. Observe, verify, map the money, convene, repair, and taped it into the back of the ledger that had started this. Paper births paper. I left a blank box drawn in pencil beneath the others. On purpose? The voicemail number called one last time. The woman's voice was steadier. He told the truth, she said. We're fine. Not hero fine, real fine. She cleared her throat. I'm sorry about the teeth. Teeth grow back into tools if you stop feeding them secrets, I said to the empty room after the line clicked. It sounded like something I would have told a student. Maybe I'd start telling more adults. The night before graduation, Jay dropped off a 3D printed chess queen, the version he'd promised, and set it on my desk with a note that said, Checkmate isn't screaming. It's seeing the board. I added it to the shelf between the plant that refuses to die and the stapler that refuses to be anywhere I left it. The crown looked small and perfect, the way good symbols do. On the channel, we cut the episode and uploaded it with chapters and the caption that tells you it's fiction, and the other caption that tells you what's real. Ready for justice? Engineered? Comments arrived like weather patterns. Some cheered, some picked teams that didn't exist, some told their own stories in paragraphs you respect by reading all the way to the end. Somewhere, a stranger said, This made me ask for receipts at my job. That's as close as I've ever gotten to hearing a prayer answered in public. I walked to the pier the next morning before the ceremony, coffee in hand, the air smelling like salt and metal and future. Birds did their stately idiot dance. A boy practiced a prom pose with a girl in sneakers, both laughing already at how they'd remember this. The ledger under my arm felt less heavy. Or maybe I'd become the sort of person who could hold it differently. I called my dad. He answered on the second ring like we were already mid-conversation. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I said. You ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. He hesitated then. You know, there's room on the wall for another frame. Maybe the next letter we post will be yours. What letter? The one you'll write when you turn this into a class for the whole town. Financial storytelling for people who don't want to drown. Or whatever you'll call it. I laughed. I'll call it boring wins. He laughed too, the kind that doesn't apologize for being late. I'll save you a seat, he said. Save me too, I said. In case someone else decides to learn. We hung up. The river moved like consequence. Not loud, not cruel, not negotiable. I finished my coffee and walked toward the gym where papers would become diplomas and kids would become people who sign forms with names that will either stand for fog or for light. At the doorway, Ms. Matthews squeezed my elbow. You ready? She asked. Ready, I said. And I meant this part more than I've meant most things. Let's keep it boring. She smiled. Process prevails. The band stumbled into the first bars of Pomp and Circumstance, a song that somehow sounds like the 15th when it's done right. Inevitable, earned, ordinary in the way a miracle is, ordinary if you keep doing it. I took my seat. No orchestral swell, no slow motion, just ink on paper, signatures on lines, people keeping promises in rooms with bad lighting. Not revenge, a sequence. Not punishment, consequence. Not a spectacle, repair. And when the credits roll on the upload, the final card settles where it should. Calculated consequences justice engineered. Next time on EP2, a scholarship fund with a leak, a guidance counselor with a ledger, and a choice between exposure and reform. Ready? Remedial plan, 3 pillars. Separate. Publish. Repay. The rest is execution detail for auditors and the board.